Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is episode number 41 and I'm re-recording it because the last time I did this, it turned out to be really bad static. So here we go, the life of a podcaster, re-recording it so that you can hear it clearly. Today we're talking about how to create and use standard operating systems in your business. Now, this is easily one of the most important things to scale, and this is coming from someone who has a master's in software engineering where my thesis was on software quality, and I've taken two companies to ISO 9001 accreditation, which is all around making sure that their processes and their systems are in order so that they get the accreditation. This is the best way that you can think about using standard operating procedures, how to use artificial intelligence to accelerate that and make sure it is implemented in the right way, not only because the fact that documentation is just one part of it, the second and most important part of it is that it gets followed. The systems and procedures are there so that your team actually uses it and you use it. And let's talk about some really important aspects of making sure that they get used in the right way and get corrected when things change in the procedure. Come, let's learn.
Hey, it's Ronsley. Welcome, you AI geek, to this podcast, my AI love affair. Consider this podcast your digital compass, guiding you through the labyrinth that is business growth using artificial intelligence. Running a business as a creative can sometimes be like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. But what if you had a secret tool that could align all the colors for you? That is AI. It's like a master key unlocking multiple doors. Thanks for being here. Let's learn.
So today, our focus is all around making sure we can create order from chaos. And it's really important that we think about this in the right way, because what tends to happen when we think about procedures is that we think it's a lot of work. And I want to reassure you that having standard operating procedures and having systems and processes actually creates order from all the chaos, especially if you're a solopreneur going into getting a team member on board, or you have a couple of team members on board, irrespective of whether they are virtual, whether they are in person, whether they are anywhere around the planet, whether they work full-time or part-time. So this is really important. It's really important that you figure out how to do this correctly. And when it comes to software quality, it's not like a bridge where you can measure the stress and the strain, the pressure on the different limbs of the truss. We can measure different things like rigidity and malleability and ability for the bridge to expand and contract depending on the weather. And we can measure those things straight away. For software, it's extremely hard to measure quality. So the best way to measure quality is a quality process equals a quality product. And that was my thesis. It was based on combining rigid methods of measuring quality and doing software development while merging them with agile methods, which is the basis for Scrum and a lot of the new things, and Kanban. These are all the concepts that come from agile methods. If you want all these notes, please go to aigeeks.co/Discord, and you will be able to get into the Discord community where you can ask a whole bunch of questions and any follow-ups that you have from this work. All right, let's talk about principles. The first principle is to start simple. Now you begin with the 20% that will give you the 80% of results. What are the 20% of procedures that you do more often that actually will get you 80% of the results? How do you want them to be done? And why these are so important? So if you can start listing these, it would be super helpful. I'll get into the steps in a second, but the idea is to start simple. The idea is to make sure that you're not overcomplicating it and you're not trying to document everything at the same time. So make sure that when you're documenting the processes, when you're starting the simple ones, the 20% that will get you 80% results, start with it being simple. Make sure that they're essential systems. Make sure that these systems are being adopted. So having a way that it is actually documented, someone can easily follow, right? So if it's too complex, it'll get ignored, and you want to make it simple, and you want to have the essential systems in there so that they get adopted. Principle number 2 is to co-create. Now, this is also important, especially if you already have existing team. If you are the person that is the top and the bottom, in the sense that you envision it and you're a solopreneur and you land up doing everything yourself, then this also applies to you, because it's easy to forget that you are actually playing two roles. So you want to make sure that it is guided by the vision of the leader, and it is bolstered with the insights of the team that's actually doing the work. So if the leader can vision what they want to happen and make sure that happens, but also align that with what is currently happening, that's a top-down, bottom-up approach. So co-creating with your team and making sure that they understand what's happening. Principle number 3 is to make sure that you always reinforce the systems. So repetition and reminders breed habit. In what that means is making sure that you have different things in your calendar, like training, when you're going to frame the idea that you're going to follow the procedure, what are the incentives for following the procedures, how can you celebrate when procedures are followed and it actually does the thing that it wanted to do. Make sure that you have repetition, make sure you have reminders, and it's also for us as people that are envisioning it and wanting to execute this. We want to be able to make sure that it is not lost on everyone, this new thing that we're doing. Every habit initially takes time to execute. So we want to be able to have these systems and repetition and reminders in place so that it can breed habit. So 3 principles that I'd love to start and build this foundation on. So there are 3 things that I suppose are top of mind for me when I think about the mistakes to avoid. The first thing is not to be too rigid. Make sure that your procedures are malleable and people can improve on them, and also make sure that they're not too hard to execute. The second is not documenting, having some weird idea that this is the procedure and it's not in one place. So making sure that there's one place for all your SOPs. And the third one is one that we all make, and I have definitely made this before, is not having a review in place. So making sure that the procedures are followed, but also making sure they're reviewed and making sure the procedures are in order so that you can actually execute properly, and whatever you're executing on paper is actually translating into doing. Okay, so those mistakes I'd love you to avoid. With that in mind, here are the 3 steps, and these are the things that you got to do to execute SOPs in your business right now. The first thing is to document your current workflow. Okay, now this goes for delivery, this goes for marketing, this goes for different aspects of your business. If you think about business in general, there's like, you got to attract people into your business. Once you have those people, you want to convert them into clients, definitely deliver to them. So if you have those 3 elements, your business is functioning. Once you have those 3 elements, then you can start to scale based on attract, convert, deliver. And you definitely, in my opinion, would have to have an attract workflow, a convert workflow, and a deliver workflow. So document your current workflows for those 3 systems. Then you analyze and optimize, and then you can formalize the procedures. Let's get into the detail of the steps. Okay, so the first thing is documenting workflows. What I'd love you to do is not start with something entirely obscure and starting from scratch. Does not work. I've just had an argument with someone in California, Ohio, where I was speaking at mastermind talks a few weeks ago, and I was talking about how this idea of starting from scratch when it comes to procedures is just a bad idea. And this is coming from someone who's done lots of audits for software companies that have lots of moving parts. The biggest one I did was 478 person company that was on the Canadian Stock Exchange. So make sure that this is with context, that you start your documentation with your current ways of doing things. You might not agree with it, but just start with your current ways rather than trying to implement change in 2 different spots, because you're trying to implement change with process and you're trying to implement change with your different ways of workflow. So don't do that. Just start with your current ways first. Use simple flows, use simple processes, use simple steps, checklists to document your process. Don't make it too complicated. Don't make it too hard for someone to understand. And then the last part, which is really important, especially for this work, and when it comes to artificial intelligence and using, and I'll show you how to do that, is to highlight the key steps. Now, this is going to make the big difference. So once you start with your current ways, you then simplify and document and then highlight the key steps in those different workflows. Okay, that's step number one. Step number two is to analyze and optimize. So, like, assess where people are having bottlenecks, where you are having bottlenecks. What is the pain points that your team and you and your business or even your clients and audience are facing as a result of your different workflows? Make sure you can eliminate efficiencies. So start with your current way of doing things and then eliminate efficiencies by trying to deal with pain points and bottlenecks. So in this part of the procedure, that's why you're analyzing and optimizing. And in my opinion, it's really important to do this with your team so that you're not creating procedures that it's difficult for them to execute. So in this part and this step, you're eliminating efficiencies, okay? Step number two. Step number three is to formalize the procedures. Now, you can have different ways of doing this. Have an SOP template, which means you have a template that you can fill over and over again that documents the way you'd like your standard operating procedures to be documented. Do you want a checklist? Do you want a flow chart? Do you want a set of steps? What do you want in that template to make sure that when someone is documenting it, it is documented the same way for all different procedures? That's number one. Number two, when you formalize procedures, I want to talk about the SRT system because that's the system that we follow. And this system is really useful. And I forget the gentleman that has created it, but it's called Systems, References, and Templates. So if you Google that and find out who it is, I want to give that person credit because it's been something I've been using inside my business for maybe a decade, probably more. So systems, references, and templates. We have a space for systems, a space for references, a space for templates. Systems are procedures that we follow often and we know where they live. References are things that don't change. It's a reference, it happens once. And templates are things we copy and paste and can reuse. So an SOP template will be in there. References, a reference to all the systems, references, and templates will be part of a reference, and a system could be your way to attract new people into your business, or it could be a system, could be your podcasting procedure on how to record your episode. All these systems really make it useful so that you're not having to think 10 times before you execute. And then finally, in formalizing the procedures, you want to make sure your staff are trained, make sure you do the audits, make sure you're reminding, and also make sure you're adding to your recurring regular reps. That's what RRR stands for. Whenever you see that in any of my notes, that's recurring regular reps. What are the things that you got to do weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually to make sure everything is in order? Having these in your calendar will make sure that you're not dropping the ball when it comes to some of these things. Okay, let's talk about how we can use artificial intelligence in the prompts that you can use right now to start documenting your procedures. The first one would be very simple. Go to ChatGPT or Bard or whatever. I would suggest GPT-4 with plugins enabled, and enable the Metaphor plugin and enable the Web Pilot plugin. And then you write this prompt. Give me examples of SOPs for X company. Now, you might be a business coach, so a business coaching company that coaches health professionals. Give me examples of SOPs for a law firm that is online. Give me examples of SOPs for a podcast production agency. So give examples. So I want artificial intelligence to search the web and give you really good examples of SOPs that you can look at and start to train yourself as to what you're looking for. First prompt. The second one is suggest step-by-step instructions for documenting your workflow processes. So what that might be, right? So if you say, I'm a podcast production agency, suggest step-by-step instructions for documenting workflow processes when it comes to a podcast agency. So if you start to use that, you have a better idea of what to do. And you're not starting from a blank page. You're starting from a place where people have done this before. And finally, give examples of methods to train and reinforce adoption of systems. Now, this is something that you can go and prompt stack. So when it's giving you examples, you can ask what hasn't worked, what's worked, make sure that these are actually used. Ask ChatGPT or AI to give you ideas on how to reinforce and train the adoption of the systems that you've created, because there are multiple steps to this whole procedure. If you do not document what you currently have, you can't analyze them. If you can't analyze them, then you can't improve on them. If you don't document them, it is quite useless because no one's going to follow them. And if you document them and no one follows them, it is also not useful to this whole procedure. And if someone follows them only once and does not follow them over and again, this whole thing is a wasted effort. So make sure you are having these in place, and you should not have an issue today because you can just literally put this into artificial intelligence and start from not a blank page, which is going to be huge. So I know how long it used to take me to do an audit and how long it used to take me to document processes and systems. I remember it took at least 5 months to document and take a company of 32 to ISO 9001. That was my first company. It was a software company. And then that was a lot of time, but now you can execute it at the speed of intelligence. So I encourage you to do that. Like always, you'll find all my notes in the Discord community. Go to aigeeks.co/Discord and you'll find that. If you want all the free stuff, the free 20 lessons for you to learn on how to implement AI in your business right now, and if you're just starting from scratch, go to aigeeks.co/level1, the digit, and download it, or just go to our website, aigeeks.co. It should be up the top. Until next time, love what you do what you love. I'll see you in the next episode.
Hey, AI Geek. Thanks for listening. Your job doesn't stop here. I want you to lend your voice to the conversation. So you can join those conversations, discussions, new trainings, new recordings, and the rest of the AI Geeks by going to aigeeks.co/Discord. Also, share this podcast with a friend, another potential AI Geek. Until then, much love.